Surely we're all familiar with the biblical account of Adam and Eve, the alleged first two humans created by the Abrahamic God in the Garden of Eden, according to the narrative presented in Genesis. Essentially, God creates Adam out of dirt, sees that he's lonely, puts Adam to sleep, removes one of his ribs, and fashions the woman, Eve, out of his rib to be his partner. Eventually, the pair winds up disobeying God and eating from the forbidden tree of knowledge, and thus commit the first sin, which then taints all of humanity thereafter. Now, we know today that a literal Adam and Eve could not have possibly existed. For one, modern humans have been around minimally for 100,000 years, and that's really a conservative estimate. It's probably closer to 200,000 years. We know when the Bible was written, and the lineage from Adam and Eve up until Jesus is only somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 years. Not only that, but we also know that it is impossible for the genetic variations seen in humans to have arisen from one initial mating pair, and then the subsequent inbreeding which would have occurred. And we're not even venturing into the fact that the Great Flood and Noah's Ark proposes that every animal species on Earth was reduced to one mating pair. Genetic bottlenecks and inbreeding depression can have severe consequences on genetic diversity, and subsequently the ability of a species to adapt and survive. This is why endangered species are concerning, because once a population is reduced too low, its recovery can become impossible. Studies have determined that the human population could not have ever been any fewer than a few thousand individuals, and obviously evolution from primate ancestors accounts for this. So having established that a literal Adam and Eve could not have existed at any time, let alone 6 or 10,000 years ago, who is Mitochondrial Eve? Well, this is the somewhat unfortunate name given to the most recent common matrilineal ancestor of all living humans. In other words, this is the woman who passed down the mitochondrial DNA which all humans living share today. I say that the name is unfortunate because it is obviously playing off the biblical allusion to the Genesis story, and frequently confuses people, especially theists who are hearing about this person. It falls in line with other deceptive names for scientific phenomena like the Big Bang Theory, which isn't a Big Bang or an explosion at all. This phrase was actually coined sarcastically and it just stuck ever since. Another example is the God particle. Again, it's a sarcastic name given to the Higgs boson long before it was proven to exist. Now, in order to understand what this means, we have to consider what the mitochondrion is. It's an organelle within eukaryotic cells which converts chemical energy from food into a usable form of energy for a cell. You may recall this organelle as the quote-unquote powerhouse from Biology 101. It is theorized that the mitochondrion may have evolved to become a part of eukaryotic cells via endosymbiosis, the process by which eukaryotic cells engulfed mitochondria and they developed a mutually beneficial relationship. The important thing to note here is that mitochondria have their own distinct DNA, separate from the nuclear DNA within eukaryotic cells. Even more important is the fact that in many species, including humans, mitochondrial DNA is exclusively inherited from your mother, with exceedingly rare exceptions, including only one known human case where a partial paternal mitochondrial genome was passed down. Now, what all this means is that we should be able to trace back all modern humans to a single woman who first passed down the mitochondrial DNA we all share today. And this, in fact, is exactly what researchers have done, tracing our lineage back to a single woman somewhere in East Africa who lived between 99,000 and 148,000 years ago. So now that we've established these facts, I want to address a few mistakes and misconceptions which arise surrounding Mitochondrial Eve. For example, Mitochondrial Eve was not the first human woman. In fact, she was also not the only woman alive at the time that she lived. She just happens to be the most recent female ancestor of all living humans, meaning that her line has produced an unbroken chain of females from when she lived until today. Some of her contemporary females may have ancestors alive today, but at some point those lines would have failed to produce a female, and thus broken the maternal lineage of mitochondrial DNA. Another important fact to consider is that while the Mitochondrial Eve label applies presently to a specific woman as previously mentioned, this label could change in the future depending upon the continuation of the maternal mitochondrial lineage. If the present lineage were disrupted, then Mitochondrial Eve would become a more recent woman from history. In addition, Mitochondrial Eve is also not the most recent common ancestor of all humans, just the most recent matrilineal ancestor. The most recent common ancestor of all humans today is much more recent. Now lastly, Mitochondrial Eve did not necessarily coexist with the y-chromosomal Adam, or the most recent common ancestor responsible for the nuclear Y chromosome DNA in all living men. Y-chromosomal Adam is estimated to have lived about 120 to 156,000 years ago. And while these two individuals may have coexisted, there is no guarantee that they did. And so with that, we've pretty much come full circle, and hopefully I've been able to explain the meaning behind mitochondrial Eve well enough, and also have addressed some of the common misconceptions about what this term means. I think the most important concept to take away from this is that mitochondrial Eve is not the biblical Eve, nor was mitochondrial Eve the first woman or the only woman alive when she lived. Due to the unfortunate popular cultural reference within the name for this most recent matrilineal common ancestor, many creationists seize the opportunity to present mitochondrial Eve as proof that the Genesis account is true and or propagate misinformation about her. So now going forward, whenever a creationist attempts to cite mitochondrial Eve as proof that the Bible is true, you can relax and remind yourself to keep calm. It seems legit. I'm Brendan, the prototype atheist. Thanks again for watching and for your support. Please like and share and subscribe to my channel. And be sure to join me and some of my cohorts each Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for the Reason Secular Roundtable discussion. We hope to see you there.